Peter Obi got 6.1 million votes in 2023 without a functional party structure, without governors, without the machinery that Nigerian politics runs on. No other major candidate in modern Nigerian history has done that. And yet, every serious analyst will tell you privately that 2023 was not the ceiling, it was the floor. The 2027 version of that coalition, if it is properly assembled, is a different animal entirely. But here's what nobody is asking. Obi's running mate in 2023, Yusuf Datti Baba-Ahmed, was not chosen because he was the strongest political asset available. He was chosen because he was safe, acceptable, unlikely to frighten anyone. And that calculation cost the Labour Party something it has never publicly accounted for: the precise margin of votes in the Northwest that the ticket needed and did not get. So the question that this entire 2027 project turns on is not whether Obi runs. He is running. The question is whether whoever stands beside him is chosen by the same logic that produced Datti, or by something harder, more strategic, and far more dangerous to the establishment. That answer is not obvious, and by the time we get there, it will not be comfortable for anyone. Before we go further, if you're new here, this channel exists for one reason: to give Nigerians the political analysis mainstream media is too afraid or too compromised to deliver. Hit subscribe and stay with me. This gets deeper. To understand what the 2027 running mates decision actually means, you have to first understand what the 2023 ticket actually lost and where it lost it. The official INEC result gives Tinubu 8.78 million votes, Atiku 6.98 million, and Obi 6.10 million. Those numbers look like a clear hierarchy, but drill into the state-by-state breakdown and a different picture emerges. Obi won Lagos, the commercial capital, Tinubu's own backyard, with 582,000 votes. He won the FCT outright. He swept the Southeast. He made inroads in parts of the Middle Belt that Labour had never touched before. What he did not do was crack the Northwest. Kano, Katsina, Sokoto, and Zamfara. Those states returned an Obi vote that was structurally inadequate for a presidential bid, and everyone in the Labour Party inner circle knew it on election night. Datti Baba-Ahmed is from Kaduna. He's northern, Muslim, educated, and broadly inoffensive. He was designed to signal to the north that Obi was not a sectional candidate. That signal was not received, or more precisely, it was received but not acted upon because Datti did not bring a political structure behind him. He brought a profile. There is a difference. The historical parallel that matters here is 1993. MKO Abiola's ticket worked, genuinely worked, across ethnic and regional lines, not because his running mate Babagana Kingibe was from the north, but because Kingibe brought the SDP's northern machine with him. The ticket was not just symbolically balanced, it was structurally connected to northern political networks that could deliver. That is the distinction the 2027 OB team has not yet resolved. Now, here's the fact that reframes everything being written about this in mainstream media. The conversation around Obi's 2027 running mate is almost entirely focused on religion and ethnicity. Northern Muslim, Southern Christian, balance the ticket. That framing is not wrong, but it is incomplete in a way that is strategically dangerous, because the variable that actually decided 2023 was not religion, it was structure. It was governors, it was local government chairmen, it was the parallel voter mobilization infrastructure that Tinubu's APC had and Obi's Labour Party did not. Any running mate chosen purely for symbolic balance without a structural contribution to that mobilization gap produces the same result in 2027 that Datti produced in 2023, a ticket that looks right on paper and underperforms on election day. The question of who stands beside Obi in 2027 is therefore not a question about identity. It's a question about what that person brings to the table that Obi cannot bring himself, and whether the Labour Party or whatever platform Obi eventually runs on has the discipline to choose structure over symbolism when the moment comes. Start with the institutional landscape. Peter Obi is currently exploring the ADC, the African Democratic Congress, as his 2027 platform. That decision alone reshapes the running mate calculation in ways that most analysts have not walked through. Under Nigerian electoral law, a presidential candidate's viability is partly determined by the spread of their party's structure across states. Labour in 2023 had a thin but functional national spread. ADC in 2026 is a party in legal dispute, with two factions both claiming legitimate control, and INEC has not yet ruled definitively on which faction holds the valid certificate. If Obi runs on ADC, his running mate cannot simply be a political asset. They must also be someone whose faction relationships and institutional connections help stabilize the platform itself before the campaign begins. That is a constraint that nobody writing about this story is applying to the name selection. Now, follow the power map. There are three names that appear consistently in serious political conversations about this position. Not in press releases, in the rooms where these decisions are actually discussed. The first is Rabiu Kwankwaso. The second is a northern technocrat profile, someone from the Nasarawa Plateau-Benue axis who carries middle belt credibility without the baggage of a Kwankwaso-sized ego and a Kwankwaso-sized ambition. The third is a southern minority figure, specifically from the Niger Delta, whose inclusion would fracture the PDP's hold on that region and potentially peel away the oil economy vote that currently sits with Tinubu's administration out of economic dependency rather than genuine loyalty. Each name represents a completely different theory of how to win. Kwankwaso brings Kano, genuinely brings it, structurally, through the Kwankwasiya movement that survived his departure from NNPP. But Kwankwaso also brings a condition. He will not be a running mate. He has said this publicly, and his political behavior confirms it privately. Any alliance with Kwankwaso is a coalition of near equals, not a principal and deputy relationship. That creates a governance problem before the election is even won, and it creates a campaign problem because two presidential-sized egos on one ticket produce contradictory messaging, contradictory rallies, and contradictory promises to the same constituencies. The Middle Belt technocrat profile solves a different problem. The Middle Belt, Benue, Plateau, Southern Kaduna, parts of Niger State, gave Obi some of his most surprising 2023 numbers. A running mate rooted in that geography with genuine community ties, not just a northern address, could consolidate and expand that base without the structural complications of a Kwankwaso merger. The weakness is that this profile does not crack Kano or the core Northwest, which remains the single largest voting bloc that Obi needs to neutralize, if not win. Here is the second thread that changes the picture, and it has nothing to do with the names being discussed. The 2027 election will not be decided by who votes for Obi. It will be decided by who does not vote for Tinubu. The APC's internal structural crisis, the governor's defections, the ADC movement, the northern elite frustration with the cost of living collapse under the subsidy removal means that a significant portion of the 2023 Tinubu vote is on play. Not persuadable towards Obi necessarily, but persuadable to staying home or splitting toward a third option. The running mate who best accelerates that APC hemorrhage is not the running mate who most excites the obedient base. Those are two different people, and the Obi campaign has not yet demonstrated publicly that it understands this distinction. Now the counter-argument, and it deserves to be taken seriously. The argument made by those who believe symbolic balance is sufficient goes like this. Nigerian voters, particularly in the north, do not vote for running mates, they vote for presidential candidates. Abiola won in 1993 not because Kingibe was structurally powerful, but because Abiola himself was, his business networks, his religious credibility as a Muslim, his pan-Nigerian brand built over decades. The equivalent argument for Obi is that his brand has already demonstrated cross-regional appeal in 2023, and what he needs in a running mate is not structural machinery, but legitimacy insurance, someone who makes the ticket feel safe enough to northern elites and traditional institutions that they don't actively mobilize against it. That argument is coherent, but it breaks down on one specific data point. Abiola in 1993 operated under a two-party system engineered by the military precisely to force cross-ethnic coalition. There was no third option. Every vote had to go to one ticket. In 2027, there will be at minimum 4 credible presidential candidates: Tinubu, an Atiku or PDP figure, Obi, and potentially a Kwankwaso-aligned northern candidate if the coalition talks collapse. In a 4-way race, legitimacy insurance is not enough. You need structural vote delivery from specific geographies. Symbolism does not deliver votes in a fragmented field. Structure does. There is one specific mechanism connecting this running mate question to something larger, the question of what the Labour Party or ADC platform actually becomes if Obi wins. Whoever is deputy president controls the party structure in the aftermath of victory. That person's network becomes the government's network. And in Nigeria's federal system, where executive appointments, NNPC board positions, and infrastructure contracts flow through the presidency, the running mate is not just an electoral asset. They are the advanced infrastructure of a potential administration. Which means the people financing a potential Obi candidacy, and there are serious financial and organizational interests now engaged in that conversation, care as much about who the running mate is as Obi himself does. That financial and organizational interest will be fully examined when we get to what it means for Nigeria's institutional balance. But here's what almost nobody has connected yet, and it changes the entire picture. If Obi wins in 2027 with a running mate chosen primarily for structural delivery rather than ideological alignment, Nigeria's federal balance shifts in a specific and measurable direction. The presidency becomes a coalition management project from day one, not a governing project. Every appointment, every budget allocation, every infrastructure decision becomes a negotiation between the principal and deputies' competing networks. This is not speculation. It is the documented experience of every Nigerian administration built on a transactional running mate choice, from Shagari Ekwemie to the internal contradictions of the current Tinubu administration itself. The economic consequence for ordinary Nigerians is direct. A coalition presidency without internal coherence cannot push through the structural reforms that Nigeria's economy requires. Unified exchange rate stability, fuel subsidy replacement mechanisms that actually reach the poor, electricity sector privatization that produces power rather than profit for connected investors. These reforms require sustained executive will over a full 4-year term. A presidency distracted by internal coalition management does not have that will. The cost is paid by the 133 million Nigerians already living in multidimensional poverty, according to the NBS 2023 figures, not the political class negotiating the coalition. The security dimension is less discussed but equally consequential. The Middle Belt, which is central to this running mate calculation, is also the geography of Nigeria's most active farmer-herder conflict, the theater of the bandits and kidnappers whose operational space has expanded precisely because of state-level political incoherence. A running mate from that region who is chosen for electoral math rather than genuine community authority will not have the moral weight to address those conflicts. A running mate chosen for genuine regional legitimacy might have. The difference is not symbolic. It determines whether communities in Benue and Plateau feel represented in the next administration or feel, as they have felt under every administration since 1999, that their security is a bargaining chip in someone else's political deal. Now, the financial and organizational interests engaged in the OB 2027 project, which were flagged in the power analysis. This is the connection that matters institutionally. Serious money is now moving toward the opposition space in Nigerian politics. Not idealistic civil society money, but the kind of money that comes from business interests who have calculated that the Tinubu administration's economic policy is structurally hostile to their operations. The removal of the fuel subsidy, the forex unification, the import duty restructuring, these policies have created a class of previously APC-aligned business figures who are now financially motivated to back an alternative. That money will not be given without conditions, and one of those conditions in every political financing relationship in Nigerian history is influence over appointments, which means the running mate question is also a question about which business network gets access to the next presidency if Obi wins. That is the institutional stakes underneath what looks like an identity politics conversation. The data point that reframes the scale of this. In 2023, Peter Obi won 6.1 million votes, spending a fraction of what Tinubu spent. Independent estimates of Tinubu 2023 campaign expenditure range from $400 million to over $800 million. Obi spent a number that serious analysts place below $50 million. A 2027 Obi campaign with genuine financial backing from displaced business interests would not be the same campaign. It would be structurally different in every state, and a structurally different campaign requires a structurally different running mate, one who can manage those financial relationships, distribute those resources through legitimate political networks, and not become a liability when the anti-corruption narrative that is central to Obi's brand meets the reality of where the campaign money came from.
The most likely next moves by the key actors follow a logic that the power map already makes visible. Peter Obi's team will spend the next 3 to 4 months conducting what they will publicly describe as consultations, meetings with northern elders, middle belt stakeholders, diaspora networks. Those consultations are real, but they are not the decision. The decision will be made in a much smaller room by a much smaller number of people based on one question. Which name gives the coalition the best chance of cracking 25% in the Northwest while holding everything Obi already owns? Watch for which northern state governors or former governors begin appearing on the same platform as Obi without formally declaring support. That proximity, before any formal announcement, is the signal that a structural alignment is being tested. Kwankwaso's next move is the variable that could reorder everything. If the coalition talks between Obi and Kwankwaso produce a formal merger, not a running mate relationship, but a genuine power-sharing agreement with documented terms, that's a different 2027 election than anything currently being modeled. Kano alone delivered over 1.4 million votes to Kwankwaso in 2023. A merged ticket carrying both networks into the same election changes the arithmetic in the north in a way that no symbolic running mate choice can replicate. Watch for whether Kwankwaso accepts any formal role in ADC structures or whether his party, NNPP, begins formal dissolution proceedings. Either of those events means the merger conversation has moved from exploratory to structural. The Tinubu administration's response to a consolidating opposition will come through INEC and through the courts. The ADC factional dispute is not resolved, and it will not be resolved on a timeline that is politically neutral. Watch for the INEC ruling on ADC's certificate of recognition. When it comes, which faction it favors will tell you something important about where federal executive pressure has been applied. That is the institutional signal that most commentators will miss, because they will be focused on the personalities. The question raised at the opening of this analysis was whether whoever stands beside Obi in 2027 is chosen by the same logic that produced Datti Baba-Ahmed, safe, symbolic, structurally empty, or by something harder and more dangerous to the establishment. The answer, based on everything the power map shows, is that Obi's team knows the difference. The people around him in 2026 are not the same people who managed 2023. The financial interests now engaged understand structural politics in a way that the 2023 Labour Party idealists did not. The question is not whether they know what is needed. The question is whether the Nigerian political environment, the INEC processes, the court system, the security apparatus, and the sheer financial firepower of an incumbent presidency allows a structurally serious opposition ticket to be assembled, registered, and protected long enough to reach election day intact. That is the uncertainty this analysis cannot resolve.
Not because the information is unavailable, but because the decision has not yet been made. And when it is made, the name will tell you everything about whether 2027 is a real contest or a managed one. The question for the comments is this. If Kwankwaso and Obi cannot agree on terms, which is the more likely outcome based on both men's political histories? Which single name from anywhere in Nigeria gives that ticket the best realistic chance of winning? Not the most famous name, the most structurally useful one. Drop it below. I want to see what this audience is actually thinking. If this analysis gave you clarity, share it with one person who needs to understand what's really happening in Nigeria. Like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.